this.
One is still missing, and oh, here it comes. Can I have the one copy?
Paul, are you ready? Do you want us to wait for you?
No, I mean, I don't have to record everything.
Okay.
So you just...
So thank you everybody for coming out tonight on such a cold evening for the focus group called Public Space. Some people were part of this process all along, and they can see the fruits of their labor. Some people are here for the first time to see what's put on the table. This is a sort of a ratification process where we can actually just ratify what has been produced. I'm going to propose that we're going to look at what's missing, we're going to critically look at what's proposed, and we can look at how do we activate this in the activation plan, and look at how do we create a steering committee around this. Yona is my business partner for Urban Soup. He assists. and I was steering the kind of the community process and the workshops, and then together, and he kind of leads the production of this. So I'm feeding him the information into this, and he helps produce this. There's some other people around here. Nico is part of the project management team from GIB. There are people from Nico Consultants, Producer Consultants, and there's others. Parcel. Look at the components, almost as if it's a menu. So public spaces is like this menu that we have these different components. We have these different precincts. For example, we have identified sort of public spaces, how you enter into Melville. That's one component. Is that considered to be number one?
Yeah, if you look at
Where is that?
Gateway.
Can you just
So okay, Campus Square, Kingsway,
Main road.
It's main.
Main Road, 7th Street, 4th. So number one are the gateways into the area. And the role of the gateways is to, how do we not only create public spaces that lead into transport interchanges and main roads. So what is that feeling? What is the kind of development that goes around there? What's the public space? How does it link into transport? Number two is the shared public spaces. So you must just help me. Where did you put number two? The shared public spaces.
Shared public spaces. So it's these spaces, the school public spaces.
Schools, public spaces, like for example,
church.
is there a potential opportunity to look at a church's parking lot to be used for communities' use and be fenced and boomed and have a gate so that you can have safe parking, and churches can also benefit from them financially. 3, indoor and outdoor.
So we're kind of positioned over here. It's not geographically in a position, but it's just noted on there. This comes from the focus group comments that people were concerned about having indoor as well as outdoor recreational space.
So this could also link to this children park over here. Number 4, green spaces and networks. So green spaces and networks also talks to, for example, how you link from 7th into the copies, and how you make a green network, for example. Number 5, 27 boxes park that was identified on there. So that's over there, and we can give you a little time on stage to take us up to speed as to what he's doing. Number 6, streetscapes and lighting. So that's all the way along, particularly around 7th and 4th. And signage and wayfinding, number 7. Street public spaces, number 8. And main green buffer.
Main road to the peace.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we're kind of just making the section.
Number 9 is this green buffer over here.
Yeah.
So what we've tried to do as a draft is to, in terms of these areas, we looked at precinct, we called it precinct 1. So for example, the entrance over here, where you come in, this park over here, where we where Eugene and I play tennis. What is that entrance like when you come inside? And the first drawing shows a possibility of, we spoke about perhaps formalizing this precinct to become a multi-sports area. So Eugene could probably look at this a bit more closer. So there's, for example, if we formalized the entrance and we had a forecourt, you had nice steps coming up to the top there, opposite bamboo, and we had a running track around a soccer field and perhaps even a basketball court, and having a decent walking, well-lit space that goes all the way to the entrance to that where you go off to Park View, and to just clean all of that space out. And there's a 3D of what it could look like when you're actually driving up to look at that block of flats where you lived at some point.
Which is that?
So this is the park.
Oh, yeah. Rustenburg and Carlo.
So it looks at it's a formalizing a public space and having almost some sort of gate that you can roll away, you can open it up, and from there you can get into the tennis courts, use the soccer fields, and it gets managed and well used. And you can. This could also be potentially a place for one of these outbuildings. Could also be used for the homeless, and this could be doubled up. So we can look at that as a facility.
How's this process going to go? You're just running through the whole thing and then we go into detail.
How do you want to do it?
I don't know. I mean, you probably need to watch time and address each space.
Okay.
within a certain
Let me
time.
just tell you what the different elements are here. Then you can always refer to it. The second precinct is this entrance over here where Campus Square is. There's a need to make Campus Square precinct a lot more walking friendly. There was a tender out last year for that precinct. How much we can influence, we're not sure, but there's also how the street needs to be addressed, and potentially corner of Campus Square, if there's some way that they can eventually open up that corner so that pedestrians can walk into that corner, but also the entrance where ABSA is. And we're saying that in the meeting it came up, how do you make public space that as an entrance and intensify that area so that it links to the transport node, but also is there potentially on Media 24 side, is there a way that we can have some sort of built form along that edge and create safety and intensity along that edge with paving and landscaping, and if there is any intensification that it could happen along that Lothbury. The next one is looking at how corners are made, so these intersections ramp up and public spaces made around so that it's a lot safer and easier for people to navigate. These are pretty standard things that happens all around the world. We don't have to necessarily go through those. And element D is about how the corner of 4th and 7th Street, so if I had to orientate it the same way,
Like that, yeah.
like this, if you came down and we halved the amount of parking on either side and we paved both sides and alternated the landscaping and ramped it up like the one before, and at the end of a year, could that be a public space that you could bollard off and become a little bit of parking so that the people in the space guest houses can still get in?
Okay, can I just make a comment on that?
Sure.
That the previous thing that we developed is to make it a winding street going down.
Okay.
And then, buses could use it and deliveries could take place certain times of the day.
Yeah.
No parking.
Okay.
And then the sidewalks are widened so they can use that.
That would be the extreme. Now, the important thing about what you're saying is that that's an opinion that we need to test, and that's an opinion that we need to test is where do we have that as a scale element. Because number 3 on that agenda is we need to talk about the activation. So on the weekend of activation, we need to choose the weekend in weeks ahead of time after we've gone through this round robin, and actually go and physically test this and see what happens if we close it off completely. Would people start to use it? Do we encourage them? Does it create blockages with transport? Will people get irritated? And then for 2-3 hours we do that, and for a few hours we actually change and manipulate the cones and see, is it, if you moved it 1 meter in, maybe your the answer is 100% right, but maybe it's about a meter in or maybe like
Sorry,
that.
but I have a problem with that because in essence, if you change something and you change it for 2 or 3 hours, of course people are going to run around like headless chickens.
Okay.
Of course people are going to complain. You actually need a longer term test of that.
Okay.
And people need to know. Also, the shops need to know because what you want is you want the shops to migrate into the public space. You want the public space to be used. For 3 hours, it's like a visit by the bishop to the whorehouse. It ain't going to work.
Yeah.
Except it probably wouldn't take 3 hours.
Point taken. I just wanted to show the last one. The last element that we discussed was parklets. So we have these avenue or streets that end in dead ends because of the landscape, and it was too, back in the days when they first planned this, you couldn't go through. So there's an idea of how we can, instead of having this derelict open spaces, we can have little parklets. There's a space where you can sit, where you can be lighting, you can be parking for bicycles. For example, any of
Quite a few of those.
any of these little parklets where you have a dead end and you have pedestrians going through, and potentially the one that connects to Kop is always this is just an idea of how you can create a space where you can have a climbing wall, some benches, some seats. Could you have a tree there? Could you have people sitting around there? It could be this place where you have a Wi-Fi spot or something. So I'm just throwing this on the table. It's for us to now discuss. Okay, the floor's over to you. So we've
I think it's
addressed.
probably good to stick to one space.
And that part of our culture or heritage rather is hidden. So we want to integrate that into the bigger play school or play area.
Where will the entrance be to the back section?
Good. So there's 2 new entrances coming into the center. One where the current refuse area is, and that'll be steps leading you into the amphitheater. And on 3rd Avenue side, where there are 3 boxes. I don't have a plan with me now, unfortunately.
Because the reason why I ask,
Yes.
the section where bus 9 is in 3rd Avenue,
Yes.
that is not a very welcoming
No, it's not.
area.
It's not currently. Yes,
Currently.
exactly.
It's really.
Exactly. And we have seen, though, that we have quite a lot of foot traffic coming in from 3rd Avenue. So upstairs, where the food hall is currently, there are 3 containers that are blocking the entrance to the center. We're removing those 3 containers and unfortunately losing a bit of lettable space in the process, but removing them totally and then making that the entrance into the center so that it's welcoming and open. So when you drive on 3rd Avenue, you'll be able to see into the center, not wonder what's going on there. You'll see the park, you'll see the amphitheater, and you'll see the inside of the center. Exposed, open, and welcoming. Yes.
So to be able to just frame then what you're saying is that in terms of an added element to public space that is usable for us, is that we're definitely going to redevelop that space so that it acts as a public space.
Absolutely. So if we want to have it as a safe public space, there is, of course, security personnel that is looking after the center generally. At night time, it becomes more difficult to have all these entrances to the center open. So the idea is still to close the center at night time to protect it from vandalism, etc. But certainly in the daytime, it will be open and people can access it.
Mothers and kids don't use parks in the night.
Exactly the point. Yes.
Oh, well, children can always play in the street.
Yes.
Will there be lighting?
Will there be lighting up at the same?
There will be lighting there. The idea currently is not to have it lit up like a stadium, because that has a direct influence in terms of light pollution for the immediate neighbors. So we don't want that light pollution. We've been very careful with noise pollution as well. So the Wednesday night market, for that reason, I moved down from the tenant parking into this area, and we have a SPL, a sound pressure level meter that we go into the streets with and measure the noise. That's why there have been 0 noise complaints since we've moved it here. And we intend to have that moving forward as well. Just in terms...
On 6th Avenue, I knew in the market was on.
The first market, yes. The first market wasn't well organized. So if I can elaborate a little bit on that also, you'll see that currently we have the same problem for the pavement on 3rd Avenue. It's horrendous, it's not safe. That's also being redeveloped, as well as the pavement on 4th Avenue as well. There was something else I wanted to say. Oh yes, a public space is not only for relaxing and having a picnic or having a walk around or having your kids play. It's also for community get-togethers. It's also for low noise level entertainment. So if there's a poetry reading or something like that, I think we really need a space for the community to come together and do things like that. Christmas, yes, absolutely. Art in the park, all those kinds of activities. So we really see this as very, very important. And again, you know, that is 1,400 square meters up there and 1,000 square meters down in the amphitheater. All open and visible from both 3rd Avenue and 4th Avenue.
One can optimize that, surely.
Absolutely. And it has to be well considered. It has to be beautifully crafted. And when we've gotten really high quality landscaper in to help us with this. He's done some very prestigious gardens, and it needs to be sustainable. It needs to be beautiful, sustainable, and welcoming. Yeah.
Some of the coffee shops have tables.
Will make a big difference to the space. But also,
Yes.
3rd Avenue always felt like a back entrance to the place. You know?
Absolutely.
So I
No
think
well-defined
that's, yeah.
entrance.
My
Rubbish
grandkids,
landscaping.
You know,
Yes.
like coming to play here, but I must admit I found it very restrictive.
Yes.
In that, you know, you had to move from one piece of equipment to another. There was nowhere they could really run or anything. So,
Exactly.
yeah,
And
I
the
look
current
forward to
state of
more-
that little play park was dangerous.
Yeah.
You know, it had little fences around the play equipment, and if you're in mid-swing and you come off the swing, then you'd connect that little fence. So, hopefully we remedy all of those issues.
I must
Okay.
say that what I've heard, it sounds like you're moving it in the right direction. Just after 27 boxes opened, I had a friend visiting from the States who's a very, very well experienced town planner and architect.
Yeah.
And after we walked through here for 20 minutes, he said, well, that's a bit amateur dramatic, isn't it?
Sure. Yes, absolutely. And that's why people don't come back often. They come back once and say, oh, wow, this is such an interesting space. It's got so much potential. And I've had that in my ear so many times over the last 2 years. And I myself, you know, when I decided to establish a business here, I thought, oh, wow, this has got such amazing potential, you know, let's get in here. But now we've really got to turn it into a usable space.
I think it needs to have some kind of identification, like the place to come and eat if you want to eat
Sure.
seriously good food as opposed to a wimpy bar.
Yeah? Yeah?
You know, or something along those lines. You know, it needs to have some kind of
Well,
theme.
the idea is, it's already in there, thank you. Well, that's exactly it. Butcher, baker, candlestick maker, dressmaker, shoemaker. Did I say shoemaker? You know, we've got a fabulous baker that's here, and I think they produce some of the best bread in a 5-kilometer radius at least. You know, it's all beautiful crafted stuff. And that's really what we want. We want people to be able to come here, enjoy, relax, eat, and come for their services.
Turn it into an artisan space.
Yes, an artisan community-based space, exactly.
Yeah. You know,
Yeah.
so I mean, even if you have an artisan butcher, and next to it you have a fine dining restaurant that gets its material from the artisan butcher, they can
Exactly.
feed off one another.
Yeah, exactly.
As such.
And we're already doing that with bread and veggies, and now we just need to expand that into larger
Public space
items.
area like that is Irene Mall. I know Irene Mall very well. You know, where children play.
Yes.
And I actually wanted to say that. Just make sure that there's a water sprayer here as well.
Okay.
Because kids love
Now
it.
let's get into the
Just one.
Okay. Let's critique what we have. Are we in agreement that the entire 7th Street becomes paved and flattened across, and then we either alternate parking or take parking completely away with landscaping, benches, trees and lights and bins?
You see, there's one problem. If you make that, we love that to be paved and closed off. But then the suburb suffers because the traffic that used to go in the main way is now going to go into the other streets where
Yeah.
there's only houses. So
Deliveries.
there's a
And
dichotomy
deliveries.
Closing the whole street off.
Okay, just
Loading, deliveries,
Yes.
all that.
You see,
You didn't
okay.
get that
So
through?
Yeah.
so there are permutations which we have to test. So what I want us to agree on that there are 3 permutations. There is a completely closed off, which is very difficult.
Yeah, no.
I don't think that's
So
really worth
what?
exploring.
No, I don't think so.
No,
It's actually impractical.
yeah.
It's
Okay,
going to
I
piss off.
disagree with you, but never mind.
Yes, but
Continue this.
all the people that live in the side streets won't have. It'll just be a.
You know, we have a working model. You don't need to put cones up. They used to have a thing called the Melville Festival. They used to block the whole street off for Saturday afternoon and all day Sunday.
Yeah.
Okay, and it worked. And the place was full of people, and there were lots more visitors coming, and there were lots of cars. I live 1.5 blocks from 7th Street, and it was rare that I was parked out, and I'm on a main street. I can't see it creating that much of an issue.
But that's
I
an
almost
event.
think it's
Yeah,
It's
it's
an
for one.
event and people come for one
Yeah,
thing. It won't
because
work on a daily
I'm
basis.
2 blocks down
It'll
and
kill
I
the
had
street.
parking and car break-ins for those festivals every time.
I don't mind it being closed off for events and stuff. I
Yeah.
think that's great.
Yeah.
And that brings people in, but it
Yeah,
won't
no,
work on a
I'll
day-to-day
disagree
basis.
completely, because in essence then what you're doing
Okay.
is you're just
Paving it,
closing
paving it.
something off for a short while to deal with one issue, then don't close the thing off at all. But the big problem we have there, no, please don't pull a face.
No,
Okay,
because
I'm making a point.
Yes, but the point is that those festivals are special events. And we get people from the whole city coming
Yeah, but
for those.
if we have this as a feature all the time, we will get more people coming in here all the time, which will bring more money into the place. And let us be honest, we want
I
money
think it
in
is a
Melbourne.
nice thing. I just don't think you need to be going like 110% at it.
No, I'll go for it. I mean, this is
No,
I want to. Okay, I want to propose.
You know, like
That's the one
this has
option.
been discussed right before, and nothing's happened. So I think if we are going to give a plan, let's give something that's really practical, and where we can get like 50% of the idea actually built.
Okay,
that's option 2.
so I've got a question. Do you think we should test it for a weekend?
Well, I mean, I'm just one
Weekend's not
person.
going to test it. We're talking
Yeah,
about
but
every day.
I just
we're
think
saying it
apples
has
were
been tested
super
already.
expensive.
The instant you have a Melville Festival, it's tested.
Yeah.
And what happens is they block off the entire street up to 4th, from 1st to 4th, which is what I think is a
No,
a
because
plot.
up to
Or do they
the
take
5th.
it right down to 5th? But I mean, I was thinking if you block it off from 1st to 4th, okay, you turn 1st into a one-way, 4th into a one-way, the other way. You block off that whole section and you turn it into an entirely pedestrian zone, which means that you can actually plant things there. You can actually create spaces for people to kind of do public performance there. It is creating another public space. Whereas if we're only using it on occasion when there's a festival or when there's something, it's not actually creating a public space, in my opinion. But then
Can I just, I just want to also add something here. This space here, where Lucky Bean
Yeah,
is actually a very important link.
very important.
It's a very important link to Fifth. And I don't think that you can turn that into,
Because you can't go
you
down
can't
on
get
these
through
other
here.
ones.
So you've got to keep in
Yes.
mind that that's not an ideal place to just
Because
being practical here. That's
And
not an
there's a
ideal
lot of traffic going down there. I also mentioned that
Yeah.
at one stage. There's a lot of traffic going down there.
From 4th to 5th.
Even
Yes.
though this might be a nice space to block, I just don't think
But
it's a good
remember,
thing to block.
but just so this is my counter argument, is that this is main arterial and that's main arterial. People also come from up here and they go through over here, and most of the roads are going this way. Very seldom do we tend to want to pop up from this to there. Very seldom.
Just remember,
And
like,
if you
a
and
lot
also
of people are going here.
and
From
al-
all the way over here, they're going here.
and also, I think that as a culmination point, as the heart of the space, you could sacrifice half a block just to have a place where you have somewhere where you have a coffee shop, you sit out. That's the place where you can have a coffee and sit out with
I
your
tend
dog.
to agree with him that it won't be that bad because
But
6th Street is just up.
But you can't get to. How do you get to 6th Street? You've got to.
Yeah,
you've
this
got
is
to.
6th
You've got to
Street,
go
isn't it?
down here to
No,
come
you
up,
come here.
Come here.
There's
which is 27 boxes here,
no,
right?
27 boxes.
So you've got to come here down because it's a one-way up. You can't go down there, so you've got to go
Wait a
this way
minute, the
around.
one way is over here.
It's the next one.
This is Fifth Avenue.
Yeah, so you can't. My point is to get into the street, you've got to go around like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean it's fine. It's just
It is-
I'm just trying. I'm highlighting a problem.
Yeah.
That's all. I'm not like.
And it's worth
Your
testing. We have to
decision
test
to
it.
make, I'm highlighting a problem. That's it.
So my question is, do you agree that we can test it?
Yeah, I mean that's up to you. It's your prerogative. You know, there's so many. There's a whole centre here with public space. I don't really know why that would be.
Because I think that centre, if in the next 5 or 10 years when the centre changes hands and then we lose that space, there still needs to be that one
We
place.
wouldn't lose that space since the whole object of this kind of plan that we're formulating is basically making it so that we have a set of rules to protect us as residents. And if somebody tried to change that space, I would hope that the city council would drag them into court.
The
No,
one
the
issue
city
about this
chaps.
space is that it doesn't have a lot of activity. It only has activity on
No,
this
it's got
side.
2 restaurants and on the
Yeah.
back side it's got guest house.
It's got-
on
yeah,
both
it's got
sides.
the-
So it's
Yeah.
only half a block that we're talking about because you still must come up. You must still come up here and get into your guest house.